Jan, can you hear us?
I was just got back on. You sound real faint, but I don't know what happened. Anyway, I don't know if anything happened while I was gone.
No, we stopped. We got kicked off the network.
Okay, you sound really distant.
Okay, give us just a minute to fix the microphone.
You sounded great before we went away.
What about now? Can you hear us now?
Not as good as before, but yes, I can hear you.
Probably a broadband issue.
I was gonna say it's probably nothing to do with because if I switch it, it's gonna act.
Nope, we're okay.
Okay. Just talk loud.
All right.
That's better, whatever you did.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next item is additions and approval of the agenda. If I can have everyone look at their agenda, we have several changes. Under our consent agenda, 5B number 2, we are removing the resignation piece for the junior high head track coach. Then under business items and reports, we have a new number 2. That will be the RFP. There's a copy of that in front of you. Item number 3 is now the 6th grade field trip request. And then all of the rest of those items will just change in number. So now you have 13 items under your business items and reports. So the agenda now reads, comments from patrons, approve monthly bills and financials, approve the consent agenda, removing the junior high head track coach resignation piece. Then our administrative reports, our board member items, and then under I, our business items and reports. Number 1 is the high school shop floor, 2 RFPs, 3 the field trip for the 6th grade, 4 graduation requirements, 5 math resource adoption, 6 high school graduation and 8th grade promotion assignments, 7 executive session for negotiations, 8 executive session for personnel, 9 approved nurse's aide / nurse, 10 approved tech director, 11 approved instructional coach, 12 an executive session personnel for superintendent evaluation, and number 13 an additional executive session if needed, followed by adjournment. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Madam President, I move we approve the agenda as amended. Second.
It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Patty to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Were you made aware, Val, of any comments from patrons?
I was not.
Okay. The next item is approve the monthly bills and the financials in the amount of $242,364.24. If you're following along in the packet, that's on page 4.
It goes for very long.
Yes, and the financials are a vast majority of those 109 pages.
And I will clarify, the Blue Cross Blue Shield purchases were all for medical and nursing supplies from a grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Thank you. We did have a question about that, so. Is there a motion to approve the financials?
Madam President, I move we approve the monthly bills and financials in the amount of $242,364.24.
And can I get a second? Kelsey? It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Kelsey to pay the monthly bills and financials in the amount of $242,364.24. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next are the items on the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes approving the minutes of the previous meetings. Those include February 12th, February 14th, February 15th, February 20th, and February 22nd. The financial report and pay bills, donations and gifts, the December 2023 KESB policies and forms for JDDAA, student misuse of medication, and JGFGBA, the student self-administration of medication. Those include the changes made by our district. Under personnel in employment, Lisa Jarvis as the junior high assistant track coach, Lena Gosnell as the Council Grove Elementary School elementary teacher, Colton Fitzemeyer as the information technology assistant, Clara Eldridge as the Council Grove Junior Senior High School student support teacher. Resignations, Blake Mayer as the Council Grove Junior Senior High School student support, Tasha Green as the instructional coach for the 2024-2025 school year, and Christelle Forge as the Prairie Heights Elementary School principal effective June 30th, 2024. Is there anything that you would like to see removed or changed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, at this time I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Madam President, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. It's been moved by Kelsey, seconded by Patty to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is our administrative reports. Those were included in the packet, as well as the maintenance director report that came out today. So are there any further additions from Council Grove Elementary? Prairie Heights Elementary? Council Grove Junior Senior High? Health and Wellness? Curriculum, Val, we're gonna get to hear from you in a little bit.
I'll do another.
For a while.
Yeah.
All right, and Mrs. Meyer.
And you're gonna hear from me as we go.
All right,
I did have one question. I
Yes.
don't know if this is the time. On Chris's report, he mentioned possibly wanting a water fountain or the hands-free ones at Prairie Heights. Is that something we could use ESSER funds for?
I don't have that answer at this moment. We
I was
might
just
be able
curious
to
when I was
talk-
reading
Yeah,
them and
yeah.
thinking,
so, I'll check on that and,
I think that I remember some hands-free stations in some of the ESSER task
Okay.
force pieces that I've looked at. So that may be an option for you, because I noticed that the PTO said they didn't have money at this time, so.
I priced them out, they're $1,100 to $1,300, that's just for a bottle filler, that's what they want in there, so I was gonna come speak with her about it, see what we could do.
Okay, but yes, if we could maybe look at some ESSER.
we have one there?
There's two in the
There's two
hallway.
in the hallway, but there's nothing in the gym, and one of the fountains is not working, one on the left's not working, and the one on the right's not, Probably, they're
bottle
old,
filler too, yeah.
and I can't get parts for them, so. That's what
Thanks. I just had that thought when I was reading the reports.
Okay, good. That's a good segue into that discussion for both of you. Board members, any items or comments that you have? I would just like everybody to note on their calendar, and this is for admin as well, April 12th and 13th, the Kansas Association of School Boards Board of Directors and staff will be in Council Grove. Admin, we'll be finalizing details with Council Grove Elementary School and with the high school. Well, we're supposed to do it this week. We may not, you may be hearing final details from us next week. But just so you know, we do plan to be in there the afternoon of the 12th. And then there is a social event for board members the evening of the 12th. So we'll be looking for an invitation coming out for that. And you can hit me up for details on that as well. So KESB will be in the area and in the buildings the 12th and the 13th, which I think is a pretty big honor for us to be able to showcase our district. So just a heads up on that. Moving on then to our business items and our reports. Mr. Dornbos, we're gonna start with the high school shop floor.
All right, we got show and tell.
So he just looks like that's just a piece of styrofoam.
Yeah, and it's not, it's very heavy.
It's heavy.
Just gonna sit that right
There you
there
go.
for now. So, we talked a little bit about the shop, at the last board meeting, and we went back and done some more work because we do have the welding stations, ordered, and they will be here before the school year is complete. And Mr. Green has a plan, to have the shop students help construct those, and basically attach those to the walls and put those all together. But with that, we'd also talked about the flooring, and kind of take it back. We actually started 4 or 5 years ago, starting to look at areas in our building that we know are permanent areas of our building, even if we do any remodeling, that we need to update. We've done a lot of work in the auditorium. There's still some work to be done. We've done work in the music rooms. We've done work in the art room. Just done some upgrades and remodeling, but the shop's an area that's in bad need of upgrades. We painted it last summer, knowing, as we start to put these projects together, we need to do some things in order, so that they make sense. We wanted to do that before we did anything with flooring. But one of the things, as we've discussed since the last meeting, and I had a chance to talk with Jay a little bit when he was there for parent-teacher conferences, and we looked at some things. As we start to talk about what needs done, it's a little overwhelming when you look in the shop. It's just in really rough shape. Some of the equipment is out of date. And so we put some stuff together. Mr. Green and I put some stuff together, kind of looking at what all needs done, but also the flooring. And the problem with the flooring is if you go in the shop, the floor is cracked. There's areas where there's not proper drainage. There's a large drain in the middle, on kind of that west side. Nothing will drain through that because it's not going to flow properly because there's cracks and concrete chipped out all around the drain. The floor's in pretty bad shape. And so you should have in your packet, we have 3 quotes on flooring, and each company quoted multiple things. The one that I have at the table, that's one that came in late. There are 2 other quotes. There's one from a garage force company, and then we also have Epoxy Brothers. And Epoxy Brothers, they're out of Manhattan. Their employees that come do the work are all Council Grove employees, or they're Council Grove residents. They've done the epoxy in parts of the elementary school, parts of at both elementary schools and parts of our building. They've done the latest work the last couple of years. So they did some work. Epoxy Brothers really got us started. They looked at what would be the most appropriate surface if we were to resurface the shop area. They've given us 2 quotes. One is if they did the basic flooring they've been doing in the hallways. They don't recommend that that's what we do. They don't think it's a permanent fix. They think you're gonna have, over time, you're gonna have damage to it. And also when you have welding equipment, that they want us to have the best rated product. So we asked the other companies to try to give us matching quotes for the different materials. The garage force company didn't quite give us what I would say, well, they did not. They have 2 quotes, and if you look at it, and you'll see on some of the quotes, when Tom asked them to quote things, some of it is for other parts of the buildings. When we're just looking at the shop floor, the garage force, there's one, it's around $25,000. That's just for the basic stuff that we're putting in hallways and stuff. The Treadwell, they did both. What's the most recommended surface? That one is a little over $40,000. The one that I would recommend, and we'll talk a little bit more about timeline, the one I would recommend is Epoxy Brothers. If you look at their quotes, there's one that's just the epoxy flake flooring, that's $24,000. The one that's recommended and that I brought you a sample of here at the front of the room, that's what Mr. Patnode would recommend. He's local, he's got students in our district, he cares about our facility. He wants to see us not have to continue to repair it. And so I trust his judgment on it. If you look at this surface and you feel it versus what we're putting in hallways and stuff, it makes sense to me. That quote, as we talk about this, I would recommend us going with, if we move ahead and it's at 39,000. And I know that's a big amount, but we're talking about hopefully a surface that we're not having to go back in and repair or tear out and put back in. As Mr. Green and I talked, and talking to Jay a little, we also noticed, we have to start with there's gotta be a plan for how to completely. Yeah, if you look at that quote, there's other stuff on there. There's like nurses' offices and stuff like that, and that's stuff that Tom still has in the works related. We're just talking about that 39,000 there, and that doesn't. In some of the quote later on, it includes the bathrooms in the shop area. This would not go into the bathrooms. This is just the shop surface area. As we started talking about the plan, we need to have a plan for equipment as well. So I'm going to come back to the floor, but I wanted to show you some of the things when we looked at shop equipment upgrades. This is not something I'm asking you to look at tonight as far as like what we're voting on. It's just some of the equipment needs that Mr. Green's put together that needs to be updated.
If we have funds, some of leftover from CTE could cover some of these equipment issues.
So on the,
Okay.
nope, yep, there. That was about,
Yeah.
Not me before.
On the equipment, these are things, like I said, not asking about tonight, but we wanted to kind of put a master plan together of what needs to be done in the shop, because we know this is a big amount to put into just the flooring. And we talked about, we spent some time, Mr. Green and I, last Friday, we met and talked about what do we need to do as far as, okay, when you look at the equipment, should we do all the equipment first and not worry about the floor? As we started to talk more and more about it, the problem with that is you need to have a base to start to put all that stuff in and on. We're gonna put these welding booths together and we're gonna attach them to the wall. Well, if we don't do the flooring first, we're taking all that stuff off the wall, which every time you start to take stuff apart, it's just like stuff at home. Every time you put it together and take it apart, there's wear and tear on that. And then looking at also some of this, the equipment, these are things that we need to get into a rotation of. This should be a part of just yearly updating of things. And part of the reason we're in the situation we are now is nobody's spent the time to get a rotation of materials. We've got equipment in there that's pretty old. And so we've talked about, when you look at these things, we've talked about some things that we'd like to then later on, as we put in an equipment request towards the end of the year, we go ahead and update as a part of yearly equipment request. Mr. Green and I, we met again this morning. When we look through these things, what we would suggest tool-wise, maybe that we look at the end of this year updating, is the angle grinders, the stick welders, and the TIG welder. Starting with those things, possibly even going in with the Hypertherm Power Max plasma cutter. Mr. Green also knows that we're limited by space in there, so these are things that we thought we could start with, and then possibly next year, the big item would be the Torch-Mate plasma cutting table, which this is something that, just with new technology, is something that we should be introducing into our shop as a tool that they can use. That's a little bigger item. It was actually a lot cheaper than Mr. Green thought it was gonna be as he started to look in prices. But that's kind of our plan for equipment, to try to update that as well. Some of our current grinders and stuff don't have what I would say the most up-to-date safety features to them, with guards and everything that go on them. So I think if I had to pick one item that I would say we need to do right away is the grinders need to come first, and then we need to just keep updating. But I wanted you to see these are prices. That's kind of the phases Mr. Green and I have talked about. We wanted to have a plan for this before you look at this and say, well, we're gonna do this, but what about all the other stuff that's out of date? Mr. Green, as we talked about this, I asked him where would this put us with other schools, if we were to do the flooring and then also update these things. And his opinion was, if we get all this done, we are ahead of most schools our size, and we're on par with several of the 4A schools that he's going to competitions at with what they have in their shops. So That's equipment, like I said, not asking that about this being approved tonight. That's stuff that we'd like to, within the next 2 years, have all these things updated. But what we are asking about is the potential to do the flooring. And the reason we'd like to get started now is because the scheduling right now to get this done, we'd like to get it scheduled and have it done by the time our welding stations are ready to go. We know we also have kids that can help with some of the moving of equipment. And then also knowing that they're starting to fill up their schedule for doing flooring. The summer gets really tough because lots of schools are wanting them in their schools, so.
Is this a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day job? What do they give you?
So honestly, they thought, the nice thing about the shop floor, we don't have to tear out. After we get everything moved, there's not any tearing out a tile or removing a paint layer or anything. So they actually, at one point, we talked about doing it over spring break, and they thought if they got in there a little bit the week before spring break and started prepping, they could be done potentially by the end of spring break. So 1 week if things moved really, really fast, but you also have to, when you get in there and doing some of the leveling where there's cracks or chips out, it could take a little bit longer.
Where would your students be during that time?
Mr. Green felt good about the fact that he has plenty that they can be doing in the classroom. There's a large classroom, which if you've been in our building, you know where the large classroom is. You can still access the greenhouse you just walk around to that south side, you can access it there. We would probably move tools and equipment into that old ag classroom that we've renovated that's right now it's a space for any teacher to take students to. So yes, we still have full use of classroom and the greenhouse, but just that we wouldn't go welding shop for just a little bit.
So when you're doing this, would you want to do the restrooms at that time too, or is that something that can be done at a later time?
That and talking to Tom, right now, we're not asking to do that right now, because I don't think we would do the same surface anyways, and that's gonna take some work. You gotta go in and you gotta take all the toilets out, the sinks out. They've gotta come in with a machine and scrape and take out all the tile. So at this time, no, we're just we don't wanna add to the time that we would be out of the shop. Any other questions?
So again, Mr. Dornbach, your proposal is that we use Epoxy Brothers and do the urethane cement floor prep included in pricing for the total of the $39,000?
Correct, and that is the product that you see here. This is the sample of it. I guess I can turn it around. You guys wanna?
It's heavy.
And this is a lot
That's-
better
yeah,
than
this is-
the other floor proposed that would go in the bathrooms and such.
If anybody else wants
Correct.
to. Yeah, that's,
It's
if you want
like
to.
you wouldn't have
Tactile
to look
disrupt, yeah.
Well, so I went in during parent-teacher conferences and looked at the shop floor, like you said. And the main issue that I saw was just how unlevel it was and how cracked it was. So it's really hard to wash a floor out with water or whatever when you can't drain it anywhere. So the good thing about this is it's non-permeable, which means when you have grinding metal and dust, it's not gonna penetrate that like it would concrete, and then you can just flush it off with a hose and then sweep it into the drain and it's gone.
So they would level out the floor?
The areas that need, yeah, they would, and they do that any of our hallway, there's nothing level in our building. So every time we do something, yeah, they go in and they do a concrete leveler. Jay's right now, keeping it clean in there is pretty difficult. This will help with that, absolutely. The other thing, if we go with a different surface, when we do get our welding stations put in, we're going to probably have to purchase mats that are specifically designed to go under them if we were to go with the flake flooring, just because of the welding and then the plasma cutting and stuff like that on top of it.
But not with this.
Not with this, we would
That would
not
be an
have to,
extra
right.
cost if we went. a
If we
different route.
went a cheaper route, that's gonna be an extra cost, and I don't know what that costs, I don't know. I haven't priced that yet.
And then, Mr. Dornbach, did I also hear you say that the angle grinders right now are a safety issue?
They're usable, and it's, we have inspectors that come through and they can be used, but we can be safer by purchasing more updated equipment, yes.
And that's a $400 investment.
Yeah, these, here, I don't know if I gave you one of those. These investments, honestly, doing the first phase, minus the first one there this year, doing the rest of them, I think are a pretty smart investment, just the safety factor, I think, yeah, anytime we can update the equipment in the shop.
It's the
I think-
eye shields with the
Right.
current grinders, the way the eye shields are, is they're just there, like, if you're reaching over and grinding your metal and your welds out, then
Right.
you're
And I
so
will
small,
vouch
you're
for
just gonna
that
get
too.
metal in your face.
For some things I have seen, which they do a great job, don't get me wrong, they take safety concerns very good, but they're,
Last year, we
Anything we
purchased
can do to make it
a
better.
bunch of new welding helmets, simply for that, we had some extra CTE money and enough to purchase, I don't know if it was 15 to 20 welding helmets.
That's what I was gonna say, the CTE Perkins funding, I think would help cover some of.
Right.
Cause then we just bought all those new helmets
Right.
just last year, yeah.
Okay, so at this time, it looks like we are looking for approval of the Epoxy Brothers LLC bid for the urethane cement floor prep for the welding room in the amount of $39,000.
Can I just say
No,
so?
you're good.
Yes. Is there a second? It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Jay, to approve the bid from Epoxy Brothers LLC in the amount of $39,000 for the welding floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. At this time, I would also like to approve the purchase of 4 DeWalt 4.5-inch angle grinders in the amount of $100 each for a total of $400.
Second.
It's been moved by Tina Ray, seconded by Kelsey, to approve the purchase of 4 DeWalt 4.5-inch angle grinders at $100 each for a total of $400. Is there any further discussion?
Is that really how much they cost?
Those were the prices that he got.
Are these the handheld ones or the ones that are on a base station? Yeah,
I'll have to clarify that.
cause the prices don't seem right. I think what they want is the ones that are on the base station, and it looks like a handheld price.
You think it's too cheap?
I think it's the wrong grinder price, yes.
And I can double check that with him. I don't know if he got
Do we have to make the motion with the price included, or can we just make the motion to get?
Jay, what do you think they normally run for those other ones? Just a guess. We can do a not to exceed total.
$1,000, I don't think it'd be more than, maybe $500. You want the ones that are on the base, correct? That you don't have
right
to
on the
move.
base with the guards.
You take the metal up
And
to that.
I don't know where he got this information. I don't know where he priced
So
it
you
at.
think they're $500 a piece?
I don't know, I can look real quick.
Just curious, what fund does this come out of? Just,
Right now, it would just basically come out of, we could use a contingency reserve, we could use capital outlay, we could use a general fund, but we also have to look and see how much Perkins CTE money we have.
okay.
Whatever we put in to request that, it could pay for it.
They're around $500.
So can we just authorize
around what?
Nancy to approve this,
Yeah.
whatever the dollar figure
Yeah.
is?
And
That's
I'll
under-
make sure that he knows what.
That's under your purview, Nancy. So we'll just authorize, I'm amending my motion to have Mrs. Meyer approve 4 DeWalt 4.5-inch angle grinders.
I still second it.
Okay. Any further
Safety.
discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, safety. I'm kid's eyes.
Yeah.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. All right. The next item is our RFP. Mr. Powell, would you like to step out of the room, please? Thanks for joining
Thanks
us.
for letting me join.
All right, everybody should have a copy in front of them. Mrs. Meyer, you wanna,
We have another $100,000 certificate of deposit coming, expiring, and we have 3 bids, one from Emprise Bank for 4.95%, one from,
that's not right, right? It's 5.25.
No.
Oh, you said Emprise, I'm sorry.
Emprise.
Emprise, yes.
Who is Uta Stahl?
That's Alida, that's, or Alida Stahl, that's
Citizens
Citizens
State.
Bank.
Citizen State Bank.
Yeah.
For 4.95, and the Farmers and Drovers Bank for 5.25%.
Not sure how to word it. Madam President, I move that we accept the RFP from Farmers and Drovers Bank in the amount of 5.25%.
For 12 months.
For 12 months.
Thank you. It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Patty, that we accept the RFP from Farmers and Drovers Bank in the amount of 5.25% for the 12-month CD. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Mr. Powell, we would love to have you back.
Was he really?
He ran away.
Really, did he go to the back room?
All right, so the next item on our amended agenda is the 6th grade field trip out of state, which is this information provided by Bobby Alexander. I'll give you all a moment to read through that. Mrs. Meyer, would you like to brief us on?
Basically, Nelson Atkinson Art Museum is in Kansas City, Missouri, down by the plaza. And so it's an out-of-state event. He would like to take all 6th graders, both at Council Grove and Prairie Heights, along with staff members. It does not cost us anything to attend, but it does, would like to make some kind of donation. He does have the Community Arts Council that might donate some money for us for a donation. 8 a.m., I-70, probably a good 2-hour bus drive, if not a little bit more, to get into the inner city of Kansas City. And they'll head back and try to be back by 2:15, 2:30 to the grade schools. They take a sack lunch, they'll eat on the courtyard at the museum. I think it's a great opportunity for our kids. And, there are 4 Monets and 3 Van Goghs on display right now, so I highly suggest that you approve an art trip for all 6th grade students.
So moved.
I second.
It's been moved by Terry, seconded by Jamie, that we approve the 6th grade art trip to the Nelson Atkinson Art Museum in Kansas City, Missouri, date to be determined. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mrs. Gear, the next item we have is the graduation requirements.
Okay. Let's see if I can get these up for you guys.
Mrs. Gear is stepping in for Amber this evening. Her and her son will be home for a few days with an illness. And thank you, Mrs. Gear, for taking over.
No problem. All right, so if you haven't heard, the state of Kansas is changing their graduation requirements. So some of these we don't have an option, we have to change to meet the new requirements. But I have them listed here, our current requirements on the left, the state changes are in the middle, and then what we're proposing. we actually made a couple of changes to this, after talking with some teachers, and Jay and I had quite a good discussion this morning, so we do wanna make a slight change to this recommendation. Our current status right now is that we require 4 credits of English, and we originally left that, but we feel like the more credits we require of students, that can sometimes be hard for students, so we would actually like to recommend that we go to the 3.5 English and the 0.5 communication like they suggest. It's gonna help scheduling wise, especially for our kids, like our tech kids that aren't in the building a full day. This will really help some of those students. So we would like to actually change that to say 3.5 English with a 0.5 communication, so that makes it the 4 total like the state recommends. Social studies, science, math, those all stay the same. They are adding what they're calling a STEM credit. This will be, they're saying it has to be an advanced science, math, or CTE class. This is constantly changing, so this new state updated is from March 15th, is the last time they updated this. And this says, according to the most current version, that we get to decide as a local system what constitutes advanced. It cannot be an entry-level courses. They're only, before the previous version of this, that it had to have something that had like a prerequisite. So like algebra 2 could count because you have to have algebra 1. So something like that. I'm sure as we continue, they'll continue to refine this, but as of right now, we can determine what advanced means. PE and health isn't really changing, we just have to code them separately, so that's something that we have to change on our end, but freshmen will still have their PE and health class. A new class that they're adding is financial literacy. That's a brand new class that will be required. And I put this in my notes, but just as a kind of thought process, this is for this year's 8th graders, so not until their seniors will we have to have this in place. For scheduling purposes, we're gonna try to make some changes right as soon as next year. Just, it helps us kind of keep things organized with that schedule, but these that aren't required until the class of 2028. And I did note at the bottom, we're asking, so if we change this to a 3.5, we would change this to a 7.5 for elective to keep this a 24. We don't want to change the required number of credits. We think that giving them that extra elective would be beneficial. So I noted at the bottom, even though we're saying 24, our students actually have the possibility to earn 30 credits. So with our trimester, they have an opportunity to earn way more than what they need. So 24 is not unreasonable.
So I'll talk a little bit about licensure and who can and can't teach communications. The STEM credits are a little different. Financial literacy is gonna take a different licensure. Maybe if I was coming back to teach financial literacy, I'm a business teacher, I teach accounting, I teach law. I don't know if I'm qualified to teach financial literacy. So there's some questions about where we're at with our teachers and whether or not we have to get waivers on them or not. The other thing that they have to have, and Jay, you might wanna address this, but each of them has to have some
That's my
type.
next thing, the assets.
Huh?
The assets.
Oh, are you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, she's gonna talk about assets.
I will
Okay.
point out, since you brought up, and some of these things, some of them are new as a requirement. We've been teaching some of these classes. It's just that we have to move some things around and code some things differently for them to count as an actual. We've been teaching different courses, and we have some online courses even that will count for financial literacy. It's really a matter of changing codes. Also, sometimes when you have a class, if it's a class that could count for financial literacy, but could count to meet another graduation requirement, you can't double them up. You know, even with financial literacy, it is a factor in looking at licensures, because, and I don't know, that document from the state changes, it seems like weekly on what they suggest. But at one time, you know, like, it could be a social studies teacher that teaches financial literacy, because a social studies endorsement has an economics endorsement with it. So it's really, when you look at what Val has up here right now, the biggest thing for us, the financial literacy and seeing what all options there will be, and we're gonna have multiple options to where it's not just one teacher that a student can go to for financial literacy, because we have to make sure we build in enough options that every student throughout the 4 years can fit that into their schedule. Really, the biggest one that we're still working on right now is the public speaking and the English, and making sure that we don't want to take away current offerings. We want to offer everything that we can. We have to get the right teacher with the right licensure. Sometimes that, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into what teachers' schedules work with that. That's the big one that we're still working through. The PE one's a pretty easy one, because we were already teaching health and PE. It's just a matter of, now we have to have them labeled. You can, so the state will allow in that area, you can teach health and PE in the same credit, but one has to be labeled specifically one way or the other. So it's really a lot of manipulating what we're doing, adding a couple things, and then Val's gonna say, the really new, the biggest new thing that's gonna be a really big project for our counselors is she's gonna talk to you about the assets. We've actually had to change our entire transcript. And it's gonna, the record keeping for it's gonna be fairly significant, but just in the last week, our counseling department and our secretaries were finalizing what the new transcript will look like. And even at that, the state's changed. We don't know what, we still don't know from the state yet, do you have to put the specific assets on the transcript or not? But this is gonna be the big record keeping portion of it.
And they just added to this, I don't know if you have seen this new one. So it says that students have to have 2 or more of these to graduate. We have to continue to track even after they've acquired 2. So if they get 20 of these, we have to track all 20. So it's not, oh, you got your 2, great, you're done. Oh, you got your 2, great, you're done. It's, I have to keep track of every single one of you and make sure you at least have 2 of them.
It looks a little overwhelming at first, and we were kind of overwhelmed at first. Our increase in counseling staff is going to be pretty significant in being able to track all this. But like I said, at first we're overwhelmed. We've got to get every kid that comes to the school, we're going to have to make sure that we sign them up for all these different things. You know, the nice thing is you can use the 4-H Kansas Kid Award, you can use an Eagle Scout. But what we found out as we look at this, right now our counseling department does an exit interview with every senior every year. So we know that we're doing one asset already with every single kid. A lot of the ones in the academic example, those are things we're doing already with most, if not all of our students. So really overwhelming at first. We do a lot of these things. Now that's gonna be the key, is tracking it, and especially if we're not just listing 2, we have to list every asset that they do throughout their.
We started trying a spreadsheet with the current group of seniors just to see like if we could track things and how it's working, and so far, looks like it's doable, but again, it's just a lot of work and a time-consuming process, so.
What is the workplace learning experience? Is that if they have a job, or is that like
So we do a lot of those already.
volunteering with, that's what I thought.
It's your internships, your work studies.
Okay.
We're probably doing more this year than we ever have. The amount of students that are out. We have students at the hospital, we have them at building blocks. Because of our teaching pathway, we have students that are doing that exact thing within our buildings, working with other teachers in work studies or internships, so.
So this part is very overwhelming, like Jay said at first, but once we get into it, it's just gonna be the time to document it all. And they still have not been clear on what that's gonna look like on a transcript, so. Our transcripts are gonna be 10 pages long, I don't know.
Our transcripts were out of date anyways, even if we didn't have this change. So it's been a good thing. It's forced us into, we needed to make some changes. The secretaries, and counselors, it was pretty time intensive, even having to cut and paste some things in to make them fit. So this has been a good change, but we will track this no matter whether, we don't know, do we have to put 20 things on a transcript? That's gonna be tough if we have to put 20 assets onto a transcript. That will force us into having a multiple page transcript.
I might also add that the district purchased this year a plugin that goes with PowerSchool, and that's how Jill Day really fronted that movement. But we attended a training, and some of this we can pull directly from PowerSchool, like the attendance and some of the assessment scores, and do it on the transcript plugin that we're using via PowerSchool. So that's something new that we implemented this year. Just a couple months ago, we did the training through PowerSchool, and like Jay said, we used to be like literally printing things and cutting them and making copies of them. So that was a big improvement, and so thankful for the purchase of that plugin, that MBA plugin for PowerSchool, and thankful for Jill Day for really fronting that.
Yeah.
What does it mean, districts cannot restrict the list locally?
So we can't say, well, we're not gonna accept an Eagle Scout.
Right.
We can't, as a district, limit this list. This is a state list. So we can't say, nope, we're not gonna count Evans 4-H Kansas Key Award. We have to count it if it's on this list.
There is some talk, so this is the state list, there's some talk that we can be innovative and possibly add some things to this, but this is a minimum of what we can
So I've had the
require.
pleasure of being in a school where our FFA student was the Kansas Farmer Award at the FFA State Convention. And I think there's certain things there that we could possibly add with some of our educational groups, FBLA, FCCLA, FFA.
All of those CTE.
You know, your president or district president or state officer, there are many things that we could add to that. And I'm not quite sure how if we have to propose that to the state to get approved ahead of time, but they'll tell us.
So this
Just
part,
It's one out of two out of every,
Just
the first two or
just
just
two total.
two total.
Yeah.
So if you just wanted to do the bare minimum.
If you
I
want to
mean,
do the
because
bare
there's some
minimum,
that will, I mean,
most of our students already will cover just with the senior exit interview and the 90% attendance. So if you wanted to go bare minimum, we could just do that. That's not what we're gonna encourage.
absolutely
Right.
not. But I mean, I didn't know if it had to be out of academic, two out of career.
and I was like, where's the 2 or more high school activities too? I think that's one we'll get a lot of kids
So if you
too.
went out for track and you went out for wrestling, you've got your 2.
At first, that stuff's important at first, because we were really worried about we don't want a kid to miss out on graduation because we couldn't get all these assets in. So they do have some added stuff for that. You know, if a kid did the bare minimum, we don't want a kid missing out on graduation because of this. We should be fine.
Well, and I was thinking from like the special needs aspect, it's gonna be hard to hit a lot of those listed. So having some of those items that could be hit is very nice.
Yeah.
To be more inclusive.
And I think our special ed departments will come up with some type of hands-on experience or experiences for them to be able to qualify.
So this is a piece of it. I mean, you can't not approve it, but this is part of the state required change. We would recommend these changes on the right with that change of this would be a 3.5 and this would be a 7.5 for still a 24, not changing those 24 minimum. We are asking to change this, definitely, I mean, it has to be changed by the class of 2028, but we would start to make changes to our current schedule as soon as next year.
The most important one for as soon as next year is, once we come up with a plan for how English and the communication credit will be offered. That's why that one we need to start working on next year, just the way a schedule works and making sure that a kid has that opportunity within 4 years to get it.
Any further questions? I move that we approve the proposed USD 417 graduation requirements.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, Tina Ray and Kelsey. The proposed USD 417 graduation requirements, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Mrs. Gear, you're up next with the math resources.
All right, let me change folders here. Okay, I created the little one pager for you guys. I tried to put as much detail in here with not be as confusing. So we're doing a split, we're asking to do a split adoption for the elementary. It was overwhelming, the teachers requested Eureka Math Squared. We currently use Eureka Math, so this is the updated version of what we currently have. And then the junior, senior high would like to use the Savvis products. And I've listed those out for all the different classes, what those textbooks would be. So a couple things to note, the total price, this is for 7 years. So we won't do another math adoption for 7 years. So this is our total for the 7 years. I've worked with both vendors and we have a set number that then I can adjust. Okay, I need 20 to go to 3rd grade and 40 to go to 5th grade, and I can adjust those numbers each year, but I have a set number that I can work with. So that's kind of how I can do that throughout that 7 years. It also includes the professional development needed to implement the new resources as well. So I tried to list those out separately so you could see the cost for those. Something we did this last round with our ELA resources that I think was really beneficial that I included were those, not just the implementation training, but then the follow-up training. I think that's just a really important piece that we need more than just initial training, we need that follow-up training too. So I included those. Do you guys have any questions? That's a lot of information.
This is budgeted.
So would you like to talk a little bit to our new members about the long-range plan and how this fits in and kind of what that looks like, please?
So each year we have a set content area that we work with to adopt new resources. So last year we adopted new ELA resources, and this year our budget, we budgeted for new math resources. Next year will be social studies. So we have this plan in place and it goes out for, oh my gosh, 10 years, I can pull it up. So we are on a rotation so we don't get behind on all of our resources being old, kind of like where we're at with the shop, and everything needs replaced all at one time. So we have a rotational basis. Each year is a different content. So this year we were up for a math adoption, and then it'll be 7 more years before we revisit math again. So that's why it's important that we get some good high quality resources, because then it's going to be a while before we get resources again. So
I might also just add to that that the subject area committees are not required to adopt a new resource. They start by assessing their current resource and see if it's meeting all of our needs or not, and determine what needs are not being met by that current resource, and then make a decision whether or not they want to change resources or not. So it's very data oriented, and the process is really great in our district. But so like social studies next year, they might sit down and decide that our current resources are serving their purpose. We have good scores, we're covering our standards. So they may just do standards alignment, and next year they may choose not to adopt a resource. So that's always an option as well.
And the reason I want her to bring that up is so that you understood that this is a budgeted amount. It's just denoting what the actual resources were and making the approval to purchase the curriculum. So that's the motion that we are seeking at this time.
Do you need the total amount in the motion?
Please.
Madam President, I move that we adopt the proposed math resources in the amount of $224,682.54 as presented.
I need a second, please.
No second.
It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Patty, to approve the math resource adoption as presented in the amount of $224,682.54. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, the next item that is in here is our dates for the high school graduation and the 8th grade promotion assignments. There's not a motion that goes on with each of these, but we ask that if you can attend, that we have those denoted, and that doesn't have to be tonight, but just by the end of the week, if you can shoot an email to Amber to let her know. You can go ahead and write me down for high school. I've got a senior.
I'll do the 8th grade.
I would also like to do 8th grade.
19th and 20th.
So Kelsey and Jamie for 8th grade.
Just so you, the high school's on a Sunday, 8th grade's on the next Monday following.
I'll do the high school.
High school, I think, is it just at 2 o'clock and then?
We have 3 o'clock.
Speak up now.
3 o'clock.
I was gonna say, Sunday, May 19th at 3 and May 20th in the evening at 7.
And Mr. Dornbos likes us to show up about 30 minutes prior for each one in the auditorium to get our assignments, so.
So let Amber know.
Yeah. And it's just totally your choice. Mr. Dornbos likes to have 3 or 4 board members at each event he needs to know so he can set up the stage.
So for the high school graduation, we need to be at 3 because of the number of, we have a lot more people on stage for high school graduation than we do for the 8th grade. So if we can do 3 for high school and then 8th grade is a lot easier. 4 max probably for that.
So I have 2 already for high school, Tina Ray and Jay. Anybody else wants that third spot?
Who's for high school?
Tina Ray and Jay.
And Jay?
Terry, you have a preference? Donnie, you need to think about it.
I'll let Amber know. Yeah.
Okay, and Patty, you can let Amber know.
I know for sure I'm out. Yeah, high school. Didn't say actually.
Okay. All right. So you'll just note that Patty's unavailable, and so she'll just be hearing from Donnie and Terry on that. All right. Moving right along. The next item that we have, so that Jan is aware and everyone else, we're gonna have several executive sessions that we're going to go into. There will be action after the personnel section, the first personnel section. There will be no action taken after the superintendent evaluation piece, so people can leave however they need to. So our first executive session is for negotiations. Nancy on the board.
How long are we thinking? 15. Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss the latest proposal for increasing the base pay rate from the teachers pursuant to the exception for employer-employee negotiations under COMA. And the open meeting will reserve in the boardroom in 15 minutes with the board, Nancy Meyer.
Second. It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Kelsey, that we go into a 15-minute executive session for negotiations to discuss proposals for negotiations for pay rate for teachers, for the exemption for employee negotiations under COMA for 15 minutes with Mrs. Meyer and the board. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries, and our 15 minutes will start once we clear the room.
You can hold full toothbrush, but he just cleaned it.
Hey, I have plenty of free toothbrushes at the health
Cleaned my toothbrush before.
department, like boxes.
I can
All right.
teach you how to brush your teeth.
Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss the latest proposal for increasing the base pay rate for the teachers pursuant to the exception for employee negotiations under COMA. And the open meeting will resume in the boardroom in 10 minutes with the board and Nancy Meyer.
And just to be clear, we're discussing the negotiations letter. So the executive session is for the negotiations letter to propose 2 teachers that may include a base pay rate increase pursuant to the exemptions for the employee negotiations under COMA for 10 minutes with the board and Mrs. Meyer. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Did we have a second?
Kelsey?
Sure.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I thought I heard it.
She's the official secretary.
Alright.
All right.
You want me to yell at everybody else?
Well, we're gonna go right into personnel.
Oh, we're gonna go right into personnel.
So the next item on our agenda is an executive session for personnel. And we will have action afterwards.
Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to non-elected personnel exception under COMA. The open meeting will resume in the boardroom in 30 minutes with the board and Nancy Meyer.
Is there a second? Kelsey. It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Kelsey, that we go into a 30-minute executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to the non-elected personnel exemption under COMA. The open meeting will resume in 30 minutes with Nancy Meyer and the board. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. And time will stop once we get the waiting room set up and the recording off. We're gonna take a 5-minute recess and then we'll come back for our next executive session for personnel.
Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to non-elected personnel exception under COMA. And the open meeting will resume in the boardroom in 30 minutes with the board and Nancy Meyer.
Second. It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Kelsey, that we go into a 30-minute executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to non-elected personnel exemption under COMA with the board and Mrs. Meyer for 30 minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. And time will begin once we stop the recording and clear the room.
Oh, yeah, the kids, they're stuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. Like, oh, hold on, I lost my paper. Madam President, are we doing 30?
10.
10. Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to non-elected personnel exception under COMA. And the open meeting will resume in the boardroom in 10 minutes with the board and Nancy Meyer.
Second.
It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Kelsey, that we have a 30-minute executive session to discuss an individual employee's. Sorry, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Sorry. Executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to the non-elected personnel exemption under COMA with Mrs. Meyer and the board. 10 minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. All right, 10 minutes for this one.
All right.
Thanks everyone for being so patient with us. We had a long discussion this evening, and so at this time, I would move that we table approving the nurse's aide, nurse, and the instructional coach. I need a second, please.
Second.
It's been moved by Tina Ray, seconded by Donnie, that at this time we table the nurse, nurse's aide, and the instructional coach. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, I would move that we approve hiring Justin Weber as our tech director.
A second.
It's been moved by Tina Ray, seconded by Kelsey, that we approve the hiring of Justin Weber as our tech director. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is an executive session for personnel for superintendent evaluation. And just for everybody that is still in the room and online, there will be no action taken after this. So,
Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss the superintendent evaluation pursuant to non-elected personnel exception under COMA. And the open meeting will resume in the boardroom in 10 minutes with the board and the ability to recall Nancy Meyer as needed.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded that we go into a 10-minute executive session for personnel for superintendent evaluation pursuant to individual employees' performance for non-elected personnel exemption under COMA with the board and the option to recall Mrs. Meyer. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Kelsey.
Oh, I lost my page again. Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation pursuant to non-elected personnel exception under COMA, and the open meeting will resume in the boardroom in 5 minutes with the board and the ability to recall Nancy Meyer as needed.
Second.
It's been moved by Jamie, seconded by Kelsey, that we go into a 5-minute executive session with the board and the ability to recall Mrs. Meyer for the superintendent evaluation pursuant to non-elected personnel exemption under COMA. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. 5 minutes.
I am actually going to fully retire, no matter what Britain says.
Okay, with no further items to discuss, we are adjourned. Thank you.
He will try and talk you out of that, won't he?
Yeah, and look, well, Thursday we're gonna be in Emporia, but look